Hello there, and welcome to Murder Most British. I'm Zach, the American around here, and growing up in rural Michigan and other places, if you wanted to go anywhere after dark or you had to drive or get a lift, walking or late night buses just weren't a thing.
And I'm Rachel, the Brit, and here in the UK, even outside the big cities, it was normal to walk or hop on a bus late at night.
Yeah, I think people don't realize the infrastructure is just so much better over there.
Yeah, I mean, as small as compared to you guys, obviously, in America, we're quite a small place. So, buses and stuff, you can just hop on a bus and go to the next bus stop, which is like, they're quite spaced out by, I'm guessing, half a mile. It's a bus stop every half a mile.
Or less. Jeez.
Yeah.
But, I say over there is because I'm coming to you live from America.
Yeah, you're currently in America, aren't you?
Yeah.
I'm still here in England.
Yeah, at home, visiting the folks and family and that. So, yep, at least we can still get this out and have some fun together and read some crime.
Yeah, 100%. It's, nothing, just distance doesn't have to stop us from doing our podcast. So it's great.
Yep, definitely.
Well, we're going to start a bus stop on a suburban road in West London. The streetlights hum, cars drift past, and footsteps scatter toward home. It's the kind of scene you'd barely notice. Familiar, forgettable, and safe. Yet even in the ordinary, shadows can gather. Someone waits, unseen, while others pause under the glow of the lamps. Moments like these pass without thought until one doesn't, and then everything changes.
In West London, at the turn of the millennium, is a patchwork of commuter suburbs: Hampton, Twickenham, Isleworth, and West Drayton. Rail lines feed in from Surrey, buses run every few minutes along the main roads, and smaller streets fold back into rows of terraced houses and council flats. Red buses mark the rhythm of daily life. After dark, they are lifelines for students, late shift workers, and teenagers heading home.
Levi Bellfield was born at West Middlesex Hospital in Isleworth on the 17th of May, 1968. He grew up in a council flat with two brothers and two sisters. His father died of leukemia when Levi was just 10, leaving his mother to raise the family. Schooling was local, Forge Lane Juniors, Rectory Secondary School, and then he went to Feltham Comprehensive.
By his teens, he was already known for petty offenses. His record included burglary and theft, later followed by driving offenses. By 2002, he had collected 9 convictions and served time amounting to almost a year in custody. As an adult, he made his living as a nightclub doorman and by running a wheel clamping business around West Drayton. Those jobs kept him out at night and constantly on the move across the London suburbs.
The areas he lived and worked in were defined by movement. Hampton, in Richmond upon Thames, had quiet streets and bus routes that cut across to Kingston and Hounslow. Twickenham Green sits at the centre of a triangle of pubs, shops and paths across the cricket pitch. Isleworth mixes residential lanes with industrial yards on the Thames.
West Drayton, close to Heathrow, is edged by service roads and lay-bys filled with vans. All of them are connected by stops, shelters, and cut-throughs familiar to anyone who lives there. The victims at the center of this story all moved through those spaces in ordinary ways. Their routines were unremarkable, defined by school timetables, buses, and nights out with friends.
Well, in Surrey, a 13-year-old schoolgirl attended Heathside School in Weybridge. On the afternoon of 21st of March 2002, she travelled one stop by train with a friend to Walton-on-the-Thames. They visited the cafe outside the station, drank soft drinks, and she called home at 3:47 p.m. to say that she would be back in about half an hour. At 4:05 p.m, she left the cafe and began walking along Station Avenue towards her house.
In Hampton, a 19-year-old student was on a gap year. On the night of the 4th of February 2003, she returned from an evening out in Kingston on the 111 bus. She got off at the Percy Road stop near her home, a familiar suburban stretch lined with gardens and driveways. From there, it was a short walk, 5 minutes at most, through a quiet residential street. In Twickenham, a 22-year-old French exchange student was studying in London. On the 19th of August 2004, she spent the evening with friends. Later, she boarded a bus but missed her stop. She got off near Twickenham Green, where a footpath cut across the grass between pubs and the cricket pitch. The paths are well used in daylight, less so at night.
Well, in Isleworth, an 18-year-old sixth former was returning home after a night out with friends in 2004. Her route took her across a road near the entrance to an industrial estate. It was a teenager's familiar journey, catching late buses and walking through residential streets under orange sodium lights.
Each of these young women was simply making an ordinary journey, a train ride after school, a bus home after an evening out, a walk across a green, a shortcut just past industrial units. These are not unusual choices. They are the small patterns of daily life in southwest London and Surrey.
The geography ties those patterns together. The 111 bus links from Kingston to Hampton and on through Onslow, emptying passengers into quiet neighbourhoods. Trains from Weybridge to Walton deliver school children in a matter of minutes. Twickenham Green is a landmark where paths and roads converge. Isleworth sits at the edge of London's nighttime economy, where late travel is normal.
If you live in these places, you don't think in borough boundaries. You think in stops, shortcuts, and landmarks. The shop at the corner, the floodlit cricket screens, the row of buses, shelters that never change their adverts. You measure time in minutes. 4 minutes from the station to home, 5 minutes from bus stop to front door, 2 minutes to cross the green.
This ordinariness is what defined the lives of the victims in their final hours. A phone call home, a ride on the 111 bus, a wrong stop at night, a familiar walk back from friends.
This is where the ordinary ends. Late afternoon in Walton-on-Thames, the 21st of March 2002, a schoolgirl leaves the cafe outside of the station at 4:05 p.m. School uniform still on, bag over her shoulder, heading along Station Avenue towards home. Traffic moves as usual. A passerby walks in the opposite direction. She turns into Station Avenue, school bag over her shoulder, walking the same route she had taken countless times before.
Well, on the afternoon of 21st of March 2002, in Walton-on-Thames, bustled with its usual after-school rhythm. Trains rolled in and out of the station. School children spilled onto pavements, and the small cafe outside did brisk business serving chips and soft drinks. 13-year-old Millie Dowler was part of that pattern. She had finished lessons at Heathside School in Weybridge and caught the short train to Walton with a friend.
Yeah, it just seems like, normal school stuff, you're getting out, go down to the chip shop, get a few extra coins.
Yeah, definitely. Reminds me of my time in secondary school,
Yep, hanging out with friends and just chatting about the day or chatting about stuff together, and then just the usual route home.
Yeah.
You just don't really think of anything that's going to happen, or
you don't perceive that anything bad's going to happen. You're just in your own little sort of world and chatting with your friends. And
yeah, well, they slipped into the cafe beside the station and found a table. The pair ordered Cokes, unpacked school bags, and passed the time the way teenagers do, laughing, talking, and about classmates, swapping homework notes. At 3:47 p.m., Millie stepped outside to the payphone and called her father. The message was simple. She'd be home in about half an hour or so. Nothing unusual, just another weekday routine.
Well, by 4:05 p.m., the girls had finished their drinks. Millie's friend left in one direction and Millie set off in another. She was still in her school uniform, bag across her shoulder, as she turned down Station Avenue. The street was busy enough, traffic moving, pedestrians passing, shop fronts all along the route. It was the kind of walk she had done countless of times before.
The distance from the cafe to her home was not long. She would have known each bend, each house, each shortcut. For onlookers that Thursday afternoon, nothing appeared out of place. But somewhere along that ordinary stretch, Millie vanished. The traffic continued, footsteps echoed, but she was no longer a part of that pattern.
Well, almost a year later, another teenager was following her own familiar route. It was the night of the 3rd of February 2003. 19-year-old Marsha McDonnell, on a gap year after finishing at Richmond upon Thames College, had gone with friends to the cinema in Kingston. They chose a late screening, staying until after midnight, and then made their way back to the bus station.
Marcia boarded the 111 bus toward Hampton, the same service she had used many times. The ride was quiet, a handful of late-night passengers sharing the upper deck. Outside, shop lights flickered off one by one as Kingston shut down for the night. By the time the bus pulled into Percy Road, it was about 12:30 a.m.
She stepped off into the cool February air. The stop was close to her house, just a 5-minute walk through a suburban street lined with hedges and driveways. Street lamps lit the pavement in steady pools of orange. The hour was late, but this was home territory, familiar ground.
As Marcia walked the short distance, she was struck suddenly from behind. A single heavy blow landed on the back of her head, delivered with enough force to drop her instantly. She collapsed to the pavement without warning.
Well, motorists driving along Percy Road caught sight of her body on the ground. The image was startling. A young woman lying motionless, blood pooling beneath her. The driver pulled over, and within moments, others on the street realised something was terribly wrong. Marcia was still alive, but gravely injured, breathing shallow, bleeding heavily from the wound.
Well, thank goodness that at that time of night, someone was driving by and stopped.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not just daytime, especially in England. We do have a lot of activity sort of through the night as well as through the day. So I think it's not always very, very quiet.
Yeah.
As I can imagine it would be in America, especially if you're living out in the sort of sticks.
Sticks.
Yeah, not like central sort of Chicago and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm out in rural Michigan, and it's like if something happened to you out here on the road at 1:00 in the morning, I'm not sure a lot of people are going to find you.
Yeah, and probably not
until daylight.
Yeah.
You'd be lucky if someone drove by and saw you.
Exactly.
So
but yeah, quite lucky that obviously the location and where this happened. It was quite a hive of activity still.
Yeah, thankfully. But also thankfully, she was rushed to the hospital. The doctors worked through the night, but her injuries were catastrophic. She never regained consciousness. Within a day, her family were told that there was no hope.
So sad.
Yeah, I mean, it was lucky that she got there, but unfortunately, it was just too bad for it, of a wound.
The impact clearly just far too much.
Yeah, crazy.
One medical report later captured the violence in precise language. A single heavy blow to the back of the head, delivered with considerable force, consistent with immediate collapse.
Yeah, it just knocked her right out.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, by the spring of 2003, the suburbs of southwest London had already absorbed 2 sudden tragedies. One schoolgirl had vanished in daylight, never making it home from the station cafe. One young woman had been attacked a stone's throw away from her front door, left to die on the pavement she had walked so many times before.
Places remained unchanged. Station Avenue still filled with pupils at the end of school. Percy Road still received the steady pulse of the 111 bus, but for 2 families and soon entire communities, those streets would never feel ordinary again.
On the night of the 28th of May 2004, 18-year-old Kate Sheedy was celebrating the end of exams. She had been out with friends in Alworth, talking, laughing, enjoying the start of the summer. Close to midnight, she set off for home. Her route took her down Wharton Road, a stretch lined with warehouses and fencing on the edge of an industrial estate.
Well, as she crossed, a car pulled out suddenly. The vehicle mounted the pavement, swerving directly into her. The impact knocked her off her feet and dragged her beneath its wheels. The car stopped, reversed over her body, and then accelerated away into the dark.
God, that's horrific. Jesus. Crazy. Just like, it just feels so like random. There's just like opportunity. Oh, I see somebody, and do whatever that they want to do. That's so crazy.
It's just mad to think that, people are just, I mean, what are they going to get out of doing this to somebody? It's just horrible.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy to think that you could just be walking down the sidewalk, just someone sees you and then, and just pops the curb and.
You never know what people are thinking. That's the hardest thing, Yeah. The risks of life.
Well, Kate lay on the tarmac, ribs shattered, both lungs collapsed. She could barely breathe. Somehow she clung to life until neighbors found her. Hours of surgery followed. Against all odds, she survived. Her recovery took months, but she lived to tell how an ordinary walk home had turned into a calculated attempt to kill.
God bless her.
Yeah.
I mean,
that must have
even
been
surviving
bad.
from something like that, the amount of pain and trauma,
Yep.
and
probably some of those injuries are going to last for the rest of her life, and that's just so horrific.
I mean, such a good thing that she did survive it, but the after effects and, the rehabilitation that she's going to have to sort of go through.
Yeah. And then the mental side of it, of
Exactly.
being scared and like every time you go out, you're like, is someone going to run me over? Like sort of a little bit of like a PTSD.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Well, a few months later, on the 19th of August, 2004, 22-year-old Amelia Delagrange was making her own late-night journey. A French student living in southwest London, she had spent the evening with friends in Kingston. After 10 o'clock, she boarded a bus but missed her intended stop. She got off near Twickenham Green instead, at around 10:10.
The green is open and broad, with footpaths crossing between pubs, shops, and the tall white cricket sight screens. In the summer twilight, it can look inviting, but by night, the path's empty, the space grows darker, and the lamps leave wide gaps of shadow. Emily decided to cut across the grass toward her flat.
Well, sometime around 10:30 p.m., she was struck behind with a blunt object. She collapsed on the ground near the centre of the green. A cyclist passing by spotted her lying face down. She was still alive, but barely conscious, her head bleeding heavily. Paramedics were called and rushed her to hospital, but her injuries were catastrophic. Within hours, she died. Her body lay only yards from the main road in a space people walked through daily. The attack had taken seconds.
Here we go. Like, it's the same MO. Struck from behind in the back of the head. So I'm guessing it's just the same guy.
Well, you would think that, they would investigate that there's some sort of connection to these because of, how likely they are showing
the same
traits of the same
sort of MO. At night, taken from behind with a blunt object in the back of the head with a lot of force. These were not the first attempts. Back in 2001, a 17-year-old named Anna Marie Rennie was approached in Surbiton. She was pulled toward a vehicle but managed to escape. Her memory was being targeted suddenly, as if her ordinary route had become interrupted mid-step.
Well, other young women described encounters across the early 2000s, a car pulling up alongside them at a bus stop, a stranger matching their pace on a quiet road, a sudden attempt to engage or block their path. Some broke away, some shouted, some simply had luck on their side. But the pattern was clear: everyday journeys interrupted by violence or threat of it.
By the close of the summer of 2004, 3 young women were dead, and at least 2 more had survived harrowing attacks. The scenes were scattered across southwest London and Surrey, Station Avenue in Walton, Percy Road in Hampton, Wharton Road in Isleworth, Twickenham Green. Each was ordinary, familiar, and public, but each had become marked by sudden, brutal violence.
Well, the buses still ran, the shops still opened, the greens still filled with children by day. Yet for those who lived nearby, the geography itself felt altered. Pavements that once carried neighbours and schoolchildren now carried memory and fear.
In Hampton, the pavement on Percy Road still bore the signs of sudden violence after 19-year-old Marcia McDonald collapsed there. Forensic teams photographed the patch of blood, then gathered the personal items scattered nearby. A scarf she had been carrying lay several feet from her body. A hair clip, broken in 2, was found close to the bus stop. These traces were sealed into bags, labeled, and removed from the scene.
Well, neighbours were questioned through the night. Some remembered hearing a single thud, but nothing more. No cry, no scuffle. A passing motorist described what he had seen. A young woman lying unconscious on the pavement, bleeding heavily, her bag a short distance away. Another neighbour said he had noticed a car parked at the far end of the road with its headlights dimmed. The image stuck with him, though he hadn't thought much of it at the time.
In Walton-on-Thames, the case of Millie Dowler had already left behind its own paper trail. Phone records confirmed her last call was 3:47 p.m. CCTV from the station cafe showed her walking out at about 4:05 p.m., bag over her shoulder, turning onto Station Avenue. After that frame, there was nothing. Beyond the cafe's doorway, no camera picked her up.
The contrast between the two cases was sharp. In Walton, no visible scene of violence, only absence. In Hampton, a sudden assault in full view of houses and traffic. Investigators logged both separately, but notes began to cross between the teams. Young women, close to bus stops, targeted without warning.
By May of 2004, another case forced detectives to widen their scope. 18-year-old Kate Sheedy had been struck by a car in Wharton Road in Alworth. Officers marked the tire tracks where the vehicle had mounted the pavement or sidewalk. I can't ever, because I just think pavement is the road. It still messes with my mind no matter how many years I've lived there.
Yeah, well, even more like you're obviously in America right now, so obviously you're going back to your native language.
Yeah.
For the past few weeks, everybody's been saying sidewalk and stuff. So
yeah, and you probably hear it in my voice. I probably sound a little. I usually get a little extra twang in my voice.
Yeah, it thickens a little bit more every time you go over there.
Yep. But anyways, so the photographs captured the swerves across the curb, the deep impressions in the dirt as well.
Well, neighbours in the area described the sound of an engine revving hard, then a thud, then the scrape of metal. One woman said that she had heard the car reverse before speeding off again. Kate herself, recovering in hospital, later gave her account. She had seen the vehicle hesitate, then swing deliberately towards her.
Yeah, so that really definitely tells me that it was like an opportunity attack.
It was there was definitely intention. It's not like
he may have been
lost
prowling.
Control or something. Do you know what I mean? He's intentionally drove into her.
Yeah, like he might have been just prowling around and driving around and to see what's happening and just she was there and it was like let's do it. He's already up to nefarious stuff. So that's
but
crazy.
Then also, did he know this person? Did he know this girl?
True.
I mean, who would randomly just think, well, I'm just going to drive into this person because I want to. It just all seems
well,
strange.
like our previous episode, like we talked about how it's usually people that want to do harm, statistically, but there are those people that's just what they do. They get
an idea in their head and just do it.
Yep. For investigators, it was a rare moment of clarity. Most victims never had a chance to speak. Kate did, and her memory was precise. The driver had made a choice.
Well, by this point, the threads of 3 separate cases, Walton, Hampton, and Alworth, were beginning to tangle into something larger. A schoolgirl gone missing after stepping out of a cafe.
And a gap-year student bludgeoned yards from her home. A teenager deliberately run down after midnight. The common geography was impossible to ignore, all within the commuter belt of southwest London, all close to bus routes or familiar suburban cut-throughs.
Well, detectives turned to surveillance. CCTV from buses, shops and high streets were pulled wherever available. But the patchwork nature of coverage left gaps everywhere. A cafe doorway might be filmed while the street outside remained blind. Footage was grainy, often overwritten in days unless specifically preserved. Many scenes offered no usable images at all.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Like back then, the storage, you had like VHS tapes or stuff like that where you didn't have.
You can't even really depict who somebody is.
Yeah,
I think they still have it now. I mean, there really should be. A lot of places that, like independent places, they don't upgrade their CCTV systems because of the cost of it. But I think there should be sort of nowadays a mandatory, you have to have an upgraded CCTV system because how can people, if it's a grainy image and with the technology nowadays for real clear pictures of people, would be a lot more helpful in, if the police need the public to help identify somebody. If you actually have a great picture of this person via CCTV, the public are more able to identify and help.
Well, it's mostly like storage space. So you need to be like, if you're filming continuously 24 hours a day, that's going to really, you need a good storage base. But like, just since I've been here, I've got family who they put up cameras in the woods for deer season.
Yeah.
So they're like, they'll send back pictures whenever there's movement, and there's some pretty good pictures. And these are just little deer cameras for the woods, So, but yeah, anyways, but back then it just wasn't as up to snuff as it is today.
No,
unfortunately. But thankfully they've gotten better, and over the past 20 years since all this happened.
Yeah, a lot of people have upgraded the systems and have clearer CCTV, which is great. I think it really helps with tracking down people and trying to identify people of crimes, serious crimes.
Yeah. So yeah, like we were saying, policing in the early 2000s operated with sharp technological limits. CCTV cameras were already common in stations and shop centers, but not in the residential streets where most victims were last seen. So I'm guessing like he kind of knew that don't get seen next to shops or...
Yeah, don't be doing it in town centre and stuff, because obviously CCTVs are... I mean, nowadays though, luckily a lot of people have got the Ring doorbells and things like that.
Yeah.
So, which doesn't just sort of cover their gardens. So it'll cover a lot, like a bit of the street. So even if these people are walking past, it's a great thing to have.
Yeah. So even where cameras existed, resolution was poor. Yeah, of course. A figure might be visible, but faces were blurred. License plates would be unreadable. Recordings were stored on tapes, overwritten in shortened cycles. Yeah, so you only have a few VHS tapes that you pop in or whatever.
Yeah.
It's you're like, I'm not going to buy 50 tapes or 60 tapes or something to you're only going to have a few of them.
Yeah, and it being a hardware as well, that you're going to have to store all these tapes if you want to keep them. I mean, even now, I think a lot of places, they only keep stuff for 30 days or something.
Yeah.
They have it on an automatic overwrite. So, I don't know, maybe they should at least be able to keep them for 3 months, and then, nobody sort of reports a crime or police don't need to access it, then overwrite it then. But I don't know.
Yeah. It's just the cost as well. But
yeah. Well, forensics had advanced since the 1990s, but it was still fragile. DNA testing was expensive and not used in every case. Outdoor scenes easily lost evidence due to the weather and contamination. A dropped scarf or a broken clip might yield nothing once handled or exposed. Mobile phones were common, but without GPS tracking, location data was limited to broad cell tower ranges.
Well, these constraints meant each investigation leaned heavily on memory. Neighbors recalling a car's headlights, a driver describing a body on the road, a survivor describing the angle of a vehicle. Small human details carried immense weight.
Yeah, well, by the summer of 2004, 3 different files were accumulating details that pointed in one direction: young women, ordinary journeys, sudden violence. But the pieces still sat in separate drawers. The link was there, waiting for someone to join the dots.
Twickenham Green became a late summer crime scene on the 19th of August 2004. 22-year-old Emily Delagrange had collapsed on the grass after being struck from behind. The detectives, they walked the path she had taken, marking the spot where her body lay, and her handbag was found nearby her, and her mobile phone was cracked against the pavement. Bloodstains on the grass told the rest.
Well, witnesses from the pubs and the shops around the green added fragments. A cyclist described the sight of Amelie face down, her hair spread across the ground. A bar worker remembered serving her earlier that evening, cheerful, speaking with a French accent. The timeline was clear: friends in Kingston, a bus ride, a missed stop, then a walk across open grass towards home.
So yeah, the surveillance footage was gathered from surrounding streets. One camera caught a light-colored people carrier circling the green close to the time of the attack. The image was grainy. The plate was unreadable, but the shape of the vehicle lodged in the file. Other cameras across Twickenham offered partial clips of similar vans passing through. Alone, each was inconclusive. Together, they began an outline of a vehicle moving in patterns around young women at night.
Well, by then, detectives were reviewing older files. The disappearance of Millie Dowler in 2002, the killing of Marsha McDonnell in 2003, and the survival of Kate Sheedy in May 2004, all now sat alongside Amelie's murder. A map pinned to the wall showed locations across Surrey and southwest London. Lines of bus routes ran between them. Each victim had been on foot, near transport corridors, returning home at ordinary hours.
As the reinvestigation deepened, statements from Bellfield's former partners began to carry weight. Several described his volatile temper and controlling habits. Some recalled his routines of driving the same roads late at night, circling bus stops and housing estates. Others mentioned unexplained absences at the hours when the attacks had taken place. Their accounts did not solve the case, but they built a picture of a man with motive, means, and opportunity.
Well, detectives also traced vehicles linked to him: a white Daewoo Nexia, a Ford Courier van, and a Toyota Prevea. A people carrier, all appeared in insurance and ownership records. These were the same types of vehicles glimpsed on CCTV stills around Twickenham and Hampton. Neighbours remembered him switching cars frequently, sometimes using trade plates. Each vehicle became another puzzle piece connecting names, places, and nights.
In November 2004, the investigation reached a turning point. Bellfield was arrested at his home in West Drayton. He was taken into custody and interviewed under caution. Across sessions, detectives put questions to him about his movements, his vehicles, and his relationships. He denied involvement with everything. When asked to account for specific nights, he gave shifting answers or none at all. The exchanges were tense. His temper was visible.
Well, the arrest did not end the work. Detectives cross-checked his statements against CCTV timings, witness recollections, and vehicle records. The files grew thick, linking bus routes, car sightings, and survivor testimony. For the first time, there was a suspect whose movements fit the geography, whose cars matched the images, and whose past aligned with the patterns now undeniable.
Yep, connected all those dots in the puzzle.
Yep.
Trial of Levi Bellfield opened at the Old Bailey in London in October of 2007. The charges before him were quite grave. The murder of Marsha McDonnell in 2003, the attempted murder of Kate Sheedy in 2004, and the murder of Emily Delagrange in August of that same year. Each allegation carried its own count, but the prosecutors told the jury they were hearing a pattern. Young women, alone, attacked close to bus routes in southwest London.
Over weeks of testimony, the jury heard how each victim's final movements had been reconstructed. They saw CCTV stills of Amelie stepping off a bus near Twickenham Green. They learned how Marsha's short walk from Percy Road had ended in sudden collapse. The evidence was presented not as isolated tragedies, but as part of a sequence.
So the forensics were central. Jurors heard about blood splatter analysis from the Hampton scene, consistent with a sudden blow from behind. They heard medical experts describe the injuries sustained by Marsha and Emily, fractures to the skull, patterns of blunt force trauma. In Kate Sheedy's case, the jury heard clinical descriptions of collapsed lungs and broken ribs caused by the weight of the vehicle. These accounts carried the authority of doctors who had examined victims directly.
Well, eyewitnesses also took the stand. A motorist who had seen Marsha lying in the road described the scene he stumbled upon. A cyclist who discovered Amelie gave his account of the body on the grass at Twickenham Green. Kate Sheedy herself testified, explaining from the witness box how a car had swung towards her, mounted the pavement and reversed over her body before driving away. Her words gave the jury a rare first-hand account from a surviving victim.
Wow. So she went through all of that and then she still got up and testified. Man, she's a strong lady.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Especially seeing the person, because obviously she would have been able to sort of view the person and know who actually did this to her and put her through all that pain. Yeah.
Wow.
Brave. It's a brave thing to do.
Yeah. So the jury also heard testimony from Bellfield's former partners. They described the man He's prone to sudden rage, controlling and violent in his relationships. Sober recalled his late-night driving habits, circuiting streets, pulling up near bus stops, keeping odd hours. These accounts added that behavioral context to the forensics and the timelines. The pattern presented was not only physical evidence, but also who he was in his character.
While the defense countered that the case was circumstantial, they told the jury that CCTV was too poor to be definitive, that witness memories were unreliable, and that the descriptions of his temper belonged in gossip, not in a murder trial. Their strategy was to argue that nothing placed Bellfield beyond reasonable doubt at the scenes of the crimes.
Well, so after weeks of evidence, the case moved into its final stage. The courtroom was hushed as the jury prepared to deliberate. They had sat through the testimony of the doctors, survivors, witnesses, and former partners. They had studied blurred CCTV stills, listened to accounts of sudden violence, and heard descriptions of injuries so severe that survival was almost impossible. Now, the responsibility rested on them.
Well, the judge reminded the jurors that their task was not to weigh sympathy, but to decide whether the evidence formed a clear and consistent picture. He stressed that every count must be considered carefully, that the law demanded certainty, not suspicion. The atmosphere in the court was tense. Even seasoned reporters later recalled the silence as the panel withdrew to begin their deliberations.
In the hours that followed, the courtroom emptied of its usual bustle. Families waited together in side rooms. Journalists lingered in the corridors. When the jury finally filed back in, the air was heavy with expectation.
Well, the foreman rose and delivered the verdicts one by one. Guilty of the murder of Marsha McDonnell, guilty of the attempted murder of Kate Sheedy, and guilty of the murder of Amelie de Lagrange. Each word landed with weight. Relatives of the victims wept quietly, hands clasped. Bellfield himself showed little visible reaction as the decisions were read out loud.
With the verdicts announced, the court moved immediately to the sentencing. The judge's words were stern, his tone deliberate. He described the killings as brutal and cowardly acts on young women, each chosen because they were vulnerable and alone. He addressed Bellfield directly, saying, "You have repeatedly attacked young females, causing terror and devastation, and you will never be released."
The sentence imposed was one of the rarest in British law, a whole life tariff. Unlike most life sentences, which set a minimum term before parole can even be considered, this order meant there would be no release, no review. The rest of Bellfield's natural life would be spent behind bars.
Good.
Exactly where he belongs, in my
good.
view.
Yep. Well, the impact of those words rippled beyond the courtroom. Whole life tariffs were reserved for the most dangerous offenders in the country. Terrorists, serial killers, murderers whose actions shocked the public conscience. So here it imposed, placed Bellfield in that grim category.
He was very prolific, with his...
It just shows that he wasn't going to stop.
Attacks on women. Yeah, exactly. I think he would have just carried on and keep causing harm to others, especially young women, which is absolutely tragic. Thankfully, he was caught and justice was served. For the families in court, the moment brought a measure of finality. Justice had been spoken aloud, and the man convicted of murdering their daughters would never again walk free. For the wider community, the sentence closed a chapter that had left a whole neighbourhood shaken, roots shadowed by fear, and ordinary journeys forever changed. A separate Old Bailey trial in 2011 dealt with the abduction and murder of Millie Dowler. Bellfield was convicted on the 23rd of June 2011 and given another whole life order.
Long before his name was known to the public, Bellfield would later place himself in the frame of crimes that shocked Britain years earlier. Investigators took those claims seriously, not because they trusted him, but because of the scale of violence involved.
Well, one of the most notorious cases was the hammer attack on the Russell family in Kent in July 1996. Dr. Lynn Russell, 45, was walking home from a swimming gala in Chillenden with her daughters, 6-year-old Megan and 9-year-old Josie. They took a country lane, a quiet path edged with hedgerows, the kind of shortcut families used without thought.
Somewhere along the lane, they were set upon by an attacker carrying a hammer. Lynn and Megan were bludgeoned to death, and Josie survived despite catastrophic head injuries, left for dead, but later found alive by rescuers. The family's dog was also killed. The brutality stunned the nation. An ordinary walk home in rural Kent had turned into a scene of horror.
At the time, another man, Michael Stone, was convicted of the murders. His case built on disputed testimony. Years later, from inside prison, Bellfield allegedly told a fellow inmate that he, not Stone, had carried out the Russell killings. The claim was chilling in detail, describing the lane, the hammer, and the scale of violence.
Police reviewed the confession but could not corroborate it. Stone's conviction remained in place after appeals. Detectives described Bellfield's statements as self-serving, suspecting it was part manipulation, part attempt to unsettle the system. Yet the possibility that he had been present in Chillenden that night hung over the case. For Josie, who survived and rebuilt her life, the shadow of alternative suspects remained.
Well, another name attached to Bellfield's alleged confessions was Elizabeth Chow, a 19-year-old university student who vanished in 1999. Elizabeth was last seen leaving Brunel University in Uxbridge, northwest London, on the 16th of April. She was captured on CCTV walking past shops near the campus at 10 p.m, wearing a denim jacket and carrying a rucksack. After that, she disappeared completely.
Her family reported her missing when she failed to return home. Despite appeals and searches, no traces of her has ever been found. She was a bright computing student with plans of her future, and her sudden disappearance left friends and relatives in anguish.
Years later, Bellfield allegedly admitted to being involved in her case as well. He suggested he had abducted Elizabeth while driving late at night. Police investigated, retracing her last known steps, but again, no evidence linked him directly. His claims were inconsistent, details shifting between retellings. Officers came to view his supposed confessions as another example of manipulation, offering just enough information to attract attention, but never enough to close a case.
Yeah, it just seems like he's just getting off on this stuff.
Getting off on trying to claim that he done all this. It's like he wants notoriety.
Yeah. Yeah, it just seems like he's like, oh, I did that. Yeah. Or he's finding stories of people who got hit with hammers.
He's probably thinking, well, I'm banged up for life, so, I might as well just try and get attention and try and get...
It's his own entertainment.
Exactly. A bit like he wants to be make himself some sort of celebrity, you know, which is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. Well, for Elizabeth's family, the uncertainty has never lifted. Without a body, without conclusive evidence, they remain in limbo. For detectives, Bellfield's words served as a reminder of the difficulty in separating truth from performance when dealing with a manipulative offender.
Well, beyond the Russell family murders and the disappearance of Elizabeth Chow, Bellfield's name had resurfaced in connection with other unsolved cases. Police looked back across the late 1990s and early 2000s, testing his possible involvement in disappearances and violent attacks that carried a similar pattern of young women, ordinary routes, and sudden interruption.
In prison, Bellfield seemed to thrive in this speculation. He gave partial confessions to fellow inmates, sometimes naming crimes, sometimes hinting at details that detectives could not verify.
Well, one day he would claim to have killed multiple women. The next day he would retract the statements or alter them. Officers grew convinced that he was just manipulating attention, dangling pieces of information to stay in the headlines and to exert control even while behind bars.
Detectives described a pattern of behavior. Bellfield would present himself as a master criminal, boasting of knowledge he did not truly possess, while refusing to cooperate when pressed for verifiable facts. Some saw it as a bid for notoriety, like you said.
Yeah.
Others thought he enjoyed watching police spend resources chasing false trails.
It does sound like he was just getting a kick out of the whole having attention, and obviously from the outside world, I think, obviously he's all in jail, only be able to talk to people, that actually, like his family contacting him and stuff and other inmates. But to receive communications from more people outside, whether that be the police or,
Yeah. He's just getting off
journalists
on it.
wanting to, interview him over things, I think, he was just getting a kick of misleading, basically. Yet the possibility of more victims, though, it could not be dismissed outright. The confirmed crimes showed a man capable of sudden lethal violence. The geography of his movements, spanning Surrey, West London and beyond, covered a wide net of missing persons cases from the same era. Each time his name surfaced, families of the disappeared wondered if they might finally learn the truth.
The frustrations for the investigators was his words could not be relied upon. Without corroborating evidence, DNA, witness sightings, or recovered remains, confessions meant little in court. For families, this left the deepest wound. The sense that a man that could be responsible might be taunting them from a prison cell, giving away only fragments. Never certainty.
And police eventually developed protocols for dealing with him. Conversations were logged, details double-checked against existing files, and any confession was treated with suspicion unless independently confirmed. The message to families was cautious. Bellfield claims could not be taken at face value.
Still, the shadow of unsolved cases remains. How many of his alleged admissions were lies? How many were contained kernels of truth? May never be known. The possibility that other young women were taken by him lingers in unsolved files and unanswered questions. The scope of his violence, where it began, how many were hurt, and how many families remain without answers, has never been definitively drawn.
Well, for the public, the confirmed murders were terrifying enough. For detectives and grieving relatives, the alleged and suspected victims expand that horror into something larger, an open landscape of uncertainty, where the true count of lives destroyed by one man's brutality may never be fixed.
Levi Bellfield remains in prison under the whole life tariff. He is currently being held at HMP Franklin, or also known as
Monster Mansion.
Monster Mansion, yeah. And that is in County Durham, and one of the UK's highest security prisons reserved for the most dangerous offenders. This is the same place that David Bieber is serving his sentence.
Yeah, I wonder if they talk to each other.
Yeah, old Florida man.
Yeah, we covered that case not so long ago, didn't we? Yeah.
Yep, previous episode of ours. Over the years, he has been reported to spend most of his time in isolation under close monitoring because of both of the nature of his crimes and his disruptive behavior inside. Well, him and Bieber would probably get along. Fucking bastard. In 2022, the outlets revealed that he had sought permission to marry a woman who had begun visiting him, sparking widespread public anger.
Oh my God. I mean, honestly, what is wrong with these women? I don't get that. I really don't get that. Why the hell would you want to date somebody that's done stuff like this?
I need to look into that, because that's it. Yeah, it's crazy to me too. You're like, oh, he's such a dangerous man, and that just gets me so hot. What the fuck is wrong with you?
I don't get it. I mean, what sort of intimate life are you going to have? Can't just hang out, watch a movie together. It's just, what is this? Why is women wanting to marry
groupies,
jailers that are in jail for life? It's just ridiculous.
Look at Bundy. Bundy was he was handsome, charming. Chicks loved him. And that's how he used what he used at that.
Yeah, obviously to get and
to do the crimes that he, But yeah, I think it was even at Core and
this Bellfield's not. Jesus, I seen his picture.
No, but it's the danger. I think it's the danger and all that, and just I don't know, morbid curiosity, and but it's still weird.
Yeah, it's super weird, honestly.
Yuck.
Well, in the years that followed, the crimes continued to echo through communities. In Twickenham, flowers were laid across the green where Amelie had fallen. Each August, on the anniversary of her death, small vigils marked the spot, with candles and photographs placed beneath the white cricket screens. The site became a reminder not only of her life, but how ordinary public spaces can become symbols of grief.
The cases also reshaped policing practice. One of the strongest lessons was the need for a coherent CCTV network. Investigators had been hampered by patchy coverage and blurred images, with crucial moments lost between one camera and the next. After the trials, London Borough's accelerated investment in street surveillance, pushing for linked systems and longer retention of recordings. Another lesson was in managing manipulative offenders. Protocols were set so that confessions made in custody would be checked against hard evidence before raising hopes for families, which is,
I think that's a great thing.
You say, wait, let's make sure before we say anything, because you can kind of jump the gun and because you're excited, you're like, I think we might have it for the family. And you want to give them something saying, if we've got it,
well,
but
it's one of those,
back.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think with them, they, if there's sort of like an inkling, then they would inform the family, this is where the investigation is. We're looking and speaking to this person. Obviously, that then gets people's hopes up. So I think, unless there is not substantial, but if there's some sort of evidence that the guy's telling the truth about what he's saying, then yeah, that's when they should really be approaching the families. But they have come a long way with the camera systems and things. And I also think that obviously with the different police forces in different areas, I definitely think, I'm not sure whether they do now, but the link in the system, so where something that happens in Bedfordshire, they can just go on assist at, if the similar crime happens in the next town, but that next town comes under Hertfordshire, say, the two district systems all police systems should be on one system. So make it easier to connect possible.
Yeah, because that's what's always held them back before as well. It's like, you're not connected to all these other ones. They should all
and they're not communicating, are they? So it's exactly.
They've been doing better with that. So thankfully,
yeah, they have, and I think that's the way to go and keep progressing on that to make sure that if something's happened in your district, then if a similar case is flagged in another district, then it can be looked at.
Yeah, as a connection.
Yeah. But for the families, the impact never lifted. Millie Dowler's parents later spoke publicly about the devastation of losing a child to such violence. In a statement, her father Bob said, I quote, "Our lives will never return to normal. We have to live with the loss of our beautiful daughter every day." His words captured the permanent absence that no sentence or confession could ever fill.
The names of the victims are carried in memorial benches, vigils, and photographs held by close family. The man responsible remains in prison under the whole life tariff. Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. But the scars left spread far wider than the walls of a courtroom. The streets themselves remain the same, bus stops, pavements, and greens. But the memory of what happened there is part of their story now.
Well, that was the bus stop stalker and killer, Levi Bellfield.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But it's also, with recent stuff as well, violence against women and stuff it's really come to the forefront. And even back then, and it's just come up and up and up and even more, bringing it to the forefront of people's minds and police. And
yeah, it's making it more prevalent, really. Action obviously always needs to be taken seriously, sort of with cases against vulnerable people, well, anybody, but especially vulnerable people that are just going about their lives and being attacked by people just randomly is, these poor innocent girls.
Yeah, but also, just violence against women in general, it's really coming up more. And so hopefully more things will be done and to protect women out there.
Yeah, 100% it should not be tolerated at all.
Yeah. So please follow us. If you liked what you heard and all that, please give us a like, comment, give us a 5-star rating. It really, really helps. It with the whole algorithm thing, it really helps there.
Yeah, most definitely.
So
we'd appreciate it.
Oh yes, please. We really, really appreciate it. So find us at Murder Most British on Instagram and TikTok and MMB Podcast on Facebook.
We've also got a link tree, which will link everywhere you can follow us down below. So until next week, stay safe, stay curious.
Bye-bye.